when you mention the word change in Washington to the bureaucracy, change is very, very attention-getting. And when you mention the word change, the first thing that happens is the bureaucracy unleashes antibodies. It's not an easy proposition, and particularly when you're trying to basically threaten perceived autonomies of bureaucracies and how to manage this. And then you have bureaucracies as disparate and diverse as Secret Service, from FEMA to immigration to customs and to immigration services and immigration enforcement, as well as the Transportation Security Authority. But the fact is that trying to deal with the largest reorganization since the National Security Act of 1947, which established the Defense Department, the intelligence community, and the National Security Council back almost 60 years ago. This is the largest reorganization of the federal government, and it has all the growing pains of one. But we do not have 40 years like the Defense Department had to go from the creation of 1947 to 1986 for the Goldwater Nichols, which defined what the chain of command was. There are three dimensions to Homeland Security. The first dimension is the federal one I've just been talking about, the interagency process, and the one in Washington, how we manage each other in the interagency process, primarily with the Justice Department, the White House, Treasury, State, Energy, and in this case, with the oncoming threat of a possible pandemic such as avian flu, we're dealing with the Health and Human Services and the Center for Disease Control as well as the Department of Agriculture's control on importing of poultry and live, food. In this case, the vector would be poultry. So we have a wide range of responsibilities at the federal level, but it's all coordinated with the Homeland Security Council alongside the National Security Council. The other dimension of Homeland Security is a state and local dimension. And this is a very daunting one because this is the grassroots dimension. This is the one we reach out to governors, mayors, county commissioners, and basically trying to coordinate how we manage Homeland Security at the local level in terms of addressing the main mission of Homeland Security, which is detection, prevention, reaction or response, and recovery. And how do we manage this? As an example of the magnitude of the challenge, we have over 16,000 police jurisdictions in this country. That's over 16,000, I repeat. This gives you a sense of what we have to do in terms of reaching out to each of these individual jurisdictions in terms of managing information going up and coming down to them. We are constantly talking and engaging the state and local, and clearly with the senators and congressmen on the Hill remind us that state and local is very important to them, and so consequently has to be important to us. That's the second dimension. The third one is the one I deal with, international dimension. The international dimension is important to us because basically the big challenge we face, if not the biggest challenge in terms of trying to prevent another 9/11 event, is how to manage the security needs and concerns of the United States with the free flow of services, goods, and people. And this, of course, implies that we have to deal with the issue of customs and immigration, anything that crosses borders. We have 7,200 miles of land borders with Canada and Mexico, 5,500 with Canada and 2,000 with Mexico. We have roughly 430 million entries into the United States. Now, some people enter 300 times a year if they live along the Canadian or Mexican border. On a daily basis along the Mexican border, we're approximating now roughly about 1 million entries a day on the weekdays. So what we're talking about of the 430 million entries that we have to process, each of them individually. So when you come to an airport, you're being processed, whether you're American or non-American. So think of that. Each time it comes in, we have to do 430 million roughly a year. We also have to protect around 92,000 miles of navigable waterways in the United States with the Coast Guard, which is also part of Homeland Security. We have about 25 to 27,000 maritime containers. These are 40-foot containers that are shipped to the United States on a daily basis, roughly approximating 9 million a year. How to manage that and making sure that the security concerns are addressed. at all times. And then we have about 120 million vehicles that enter the United States. And we also have to process those and do risk management in terms of assessing the need to inspect physically each one of them, just like as we do maritime containers. We do not inspect every maritime container. We have a system which I can get into in the questions and answers in terms of how we deal with it. So this gives you a broad brush sense of what we do on cross-border. The important thing is we have in risk management in creating a security envelope, as Secretary Chertoff likes to talk about, and how do we extend the borders out. And we did this, it's simpler to explain this by using the Container Security Initiative, which we started nearly 4 years ago. We started with the Dutch in Rotterdam, and basically it's a supply chain information gathering to make sure that we do as accurate as possible risk management, understanding what the contents of a container is, who shipped it, who manufactured the goods, who managed it, what crew, what truck driver, what port it was shipped from, and what terminal operator worked on it, put it on the vessel, and know the names of the crew members on the vessel. And then if it was disembarked in Long Beach or Los Angeles or Seattle or New York or whatever port, also understand who the operator is and who the recipient ultimately is. We've got a good handle on cargo security in terms of the maritime aspect. Where we do not have as good a fix is a security cargo, or the security concerns we have with air cargo. You can imagine a FedEx aircraft coming in from Shanghai into Los Angeles with one envelope which is addressed to someone, a packet, or a suitcase, or a box, or a container as big as a room in a house. So how do we manage that technologically? Unlike we can do it with container security, maritime container. So we're looking at technologies. Increasingly, we look at technology as a complement in terms of our efforts in trying to manage the risk of containers and air cargo, and basically cargo overall. The one that becomes more interesting is the issue of dealing with passengers entering the United States. As you notice I said 430 million entries are processed. Roughly about 360 million are entering from Mexico and Canada on a yearly basis. Anywhere from 35 to 60 million come into our international airports on an annual basis. How do we manage that? Many of them come from visa waiver countries where they don't require visas, such as the European Union, the older European Union. I should not say the expanded, because the expanded Eastern European countries do not have visa waiver. But it also includes Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, and Australia in terms of the visa waiver.